Oh, I'm going to say good morning. Do I have the time zone correct? Good morning.
That's correct.
Okay. How's your day going aside from answering the same questions over and over and over again about yourself?
Thankfully, I'm not tired of answering the questions over and over at this point. So I'm doing fabulous. I'm just grateful that you would like to spend this little amount of time with me. So thank you.
Oh, come on. Well, so much to talk about. The first thing, Never Give Up on Love, the new single. When did you actually track that?
We wrote my amazing collaborator, Davey Nathan, and I wrote this, I think
Hmm.
last year. And I had just finished doing a tribute, had debuted this tribute show to Aretha Franklin at the Royal
Yes.
Albert Hall in London. And so just being immersed in the soulfulness of Aretha, I said, I want to do a song that Aretha would do today, might do today. And that's where we came up with Never Give Up on Love. It's got that soulfulness, the organ, it reminds you of church, but it's talking
Hmm.
about this romantic love, but it feels like that soul stirring, emotion.
Right. We're going to come back to the Aretha show in a second, but
Yeah.
does that mean that there's an EP coming or a full-length album, or are you one of those artists that goes one single at a time, that's all the public cares about?
That is exactly it. One single at a time. That's all the attention span that
Yeah.
we have. And so I'm going to be dropping a song every last Friday of the month. And so I dropped Never Give Up on Love end of April, and I'll be doing the same the next couple months. And I think I'll drop the EP in August. But I do have an album ready to go. Yes, I do. But
Oh,
I know how it is.
fantastic. So the Aretha show gets the PBS treatment, which,
Yeah.
it shows the world what it is that you did. But how long was it from conceptualizing that show to taking it on the road?
Oh man, I just remember I met the incredible Jules Buckley, conductor, arranger, um, back when I was touring with Quincy Jones, and we were doing
Hmm.
shows. This was 2019, and Jules and I just connected immediately. We said, we got to do something together at some point. And so we kept, having all these different ideas what it could be doing, because we were actually touring a Quincy centered kind of show, which was amazing. But Quincy would be there with us. So
Right.
we're doing everything from Sarah Vaughan to Michael Jackson to Tamia to James Ingram, so it had all of those elements to it. So we had toured that show as well a couple times together. But we were saying, okay, well, what could we do together? And so after Aretha had passed, I was just saying, man, someone who can, since I play piano, we really could go really deep into this show and not just only do the hits like, Natural Woman and Respect, which you obviously have to have and have to do, but we could do
Sure.
Somewhere, where she's playing jazz piano and it goes into this whole jazz trio with the orchestra. That was the one of the only collaborative albums that she and Quincy Jones did together. I just felt like we could go deeper. I have a church background, and so we start the
Right.
show with Precious Memories, so really showing the breadth of who she was, the jazz singer, the gospel singer, the musician, all of that, the songwriter. So we debuted the show in 2020. So, obviously we all know what happened to the world in 2020.
Yeah.
um, and then also 2021. So by the time the world started opening up again in 2022, we debuted it at the Royal Albert Hall in London and have been touring it all over Europe. And finally, I said, we got to bring this show to the States, because she was an American artist, and I think
Sure.
American audiences would want to see this show. And so it's gonna debut on PBS nationally starting May 30th.
And this show is not your first collaboration with Ricky Minor, a person who's had many jobs, many titles like yourself. But how did you and Ricky first connect?
I met Ricky Minor through Stevie Wonder.
Oh,
And Stevie is such a dear friend and mentor of mine. And the very first show that Stevie and I did together is the very first show that Ricky and I did together, because it was his annual House Full of Toys benefit during the Christmas season. And this is when I'm gonna really show how long it was ago, because it was called the Nokia back then. Now it's Crypto Arena. But it was
Yeah.
called Nokia at that time. And that was our first show. So Ricky Minor was the MD, and and the rest is history. He and I, went on to do so many different things together. He brought me in for the White House tribute to Ray Charles, um, the Governor's Awards. He's actually how I met Q. He introduced me to Q because he was having a private event. He was ending a private event at Q's home, and um, asked me to come sing for it. And, so many amazing and beautiful things that have happened in my career have been due to Ricky Minor.
You couple of names right there, but most people just kind of have one mentor or one legend that they work with for more than a month. And in your case, Stevie, Quincy Jones, Ricky Minor, we'll put him in mentor adjacent category, but Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, etc.
Yes.
I'm blown away by all this, and of course, at around what time in your career did you stop feeling the imposter syndrome and start going, things are going to be okay?
I love that. I love that, because I think we all have that one moment where it was like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is
Mhm.
why I'm here. It was the Songwriters Hall of Fame Awards. And I had just done a tribute to Burt Bacharach and Hal David with the Gershwin Prize at the White House. Now, I have a very, very interesting journey and story, because so many things that usually happen at the end of someone's career kind of happened in the beginning. So I had no management, I had no album, I had nothing, you know. But somehow I was in the White House paying tribute to, Burt Bacharach and Hal David.
Yeah.
He would later soon pass, Hal David. And so
Yes.
they wanted to name the Starlight Award, a new award that they were going to be presenting at the Songwriters Hall of Fame Awards. It was going to be called the Hal David Starlight Award. And so since I had just a few months before had done a tribute to them, they said, oh, we should just have Shele come and sing, anyone who had a heart for this event. So just to give you a ballpark, Sting opened the show. So
Yeah.
he was the
He's okay.
opener. He was
Yeah.
the opener. you
Yeah.
know? So it was that kind of a crowd. It was that kind of, Journey performed. And so, in the audience, it's Elton John and Berry Gordy and Smokey Robinson, the late, great Natalie Cole,
Yeah. What
Clive
one of the
Davis.
people, to rudely interrupt you, Natalie Cole, one of the people who made you want to sing in the first place.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. So that, as you know, that was a big deal for her to be there. Just every person you could think of. And I remember thinking, and then you had Shele, who nobody knew, like nobody in the world knew. And so I thought to myself, if I can, this is probably going to be the hardest room I will ever perform for, because they have seen it all, and their bar is so high. These are
Sure.
legends. This is a room full of legends. So I do my little song. I do Anyone Who Had a Heart. I'm sitting at the piano, and then there's a little point where I kind of get up and do the last part of the song, and so I just remember my eyes were closed as I hit the last note, and then when I opened my eyes, they were all on their feet. And I was like, to get a standing ovation from this room, started by the great, no, he's very much with us, by the great Berry Gordy and Smokey Robinson. That was a moment that said, honey, you're okay. You're okay. You deserve to be in these rooms. There's no imposter here. You're real. What you did was real, because nobody knew you, and you were still able to move this room with your gift.
That's fantastic. Now, when I had the pleasure of speaking with you 5 years ago, the new project was the Clark Sisters, First Ladies of Gospel, role as Dorinda Clark Cole. More acting, do you hope that comes in your future?
I do. And I actually have been able to be a part of a few films, obviously not as big as The Clark Sisters, because that went on to be the #1 television movie of 2020. It got the Critics' Choice Award
Yeah.
nomination, NAACP nomination, and it won a Stellar Award. But there was a movie I was in, and it was kind of cool because it had nothing to do with music. I sold homes. It was called Montrose Blood Rules, and it was really cool. It was about this family, this affluent family that lived in the South, and people were trying to take their land. So it was almost like a black version of Yellowstone. It had those kind of
Sure.
a lot of secrets in the family, and things like that. So that was really cool, and that was actually going to be turned. It was initially going to be turned into a series, a television series, but things are, as are very, very challenging in the film and television industry. So I'm guessing, it didn't pan out, but I was in that. And then I was in another movie called The Caregiver, and I played a police officer, very small role, but it was really cool. And so I have been able to do a few little things since then.
Enough to qualify for SAG-AFTRA life pension, we hope stuff. And if not, 1 or 2 more roles and you'll be there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, of course. Of course. So down to the last few questions here. Kind of stupid questions, if you're ready for those.
Okay.
I said before the names Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. I've never seen a photo of the two of them not in the suits. Do they record when you work with them in the studio? Do they wear the suits?
They do not wear the suits.
That's
Do
kind
not
of a
wear the
disappointment.
suits.
I wanted to know that they 24/7 live the gimmick and wear the suits and the shades, even if it's like dark inside.
Right. But you know what? I love that when you think about branding,
Yeah.
they have done it in public every single time. So it exactly, when you think of two guys with suits, with the glasses and the hat, it's Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. So, they've been very consistent in all of our shows. I actually toured with them. Believe it or not, they had never toured as Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Of course, we know they, were with the time,
Yeah.
but they had never toured as Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. And so this past summer, we actually did some dates in Japan, in Tokyo and Osaka,
Yeah.
which was just amazing. And so, of course, they had the suits, they had the shades, the whole 9 yards. So that was really, 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 really fun.
That ties in with the next thing that I wanted to know, which is that I knew that Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis had a lot of success in Japan that is not really known over here. I think working with Utada,
Yes.
and then there's the excellent club circuit of Billboard Live
Yep.
and Potting Club and all that over there. So I was curious if you had overseas success, knowing that you did the Dubai stuff in Q with Q and that team, but did you have a secret career in Asia that we didn't know about?
What's interesting is in my first album, which was some time ago, they were selling hard copies of my album in Japan. I always think Japan is like the best place. They have the best fans. They
Yeah.
buy all your stuff. They do the research on who you are. I just love. So yes, I did have a fan base in Japan. What's interesting though is what's incredible about social media, and is you can kind of like see where your fans are.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look on my IG, the professional account, it will say that outside of America, most of my fans are in Brazil.
That makes sense.
And I've never done a show there, but I have so many fans in Brazil. And so I actually went there on a personal trip earlier this year. I walked into this little club, evidently where Sergio Mendes, another late great collaborator, I had 2 songs on his album. evidently this is where he, developed that bossa nova sound, the early years of that. And there was a woman singing there, and I don't know what it was. She looked at me and she said, "Are you a singer?" But she said it in Portuguese, but I knew cantante. I knew what she was saying.
Yeah.
Invited me to come up. I sang with her. She sang in Portuguese. We sang Autumn Leaves. We're going back and forth in English and It was the most beautiful, organic moment probably of my life. I posted it. All of my Brazilian fans, where are you? Where are you? We'll come to you. We'll come, see where we're from. I was like, this was just an impromptu moment. So I'm hoping that I can just go back. And what I love about Brazil is like it was literally that particular show. It was just her and a guitarist. And that was like she did an hour and a half, of just that. And everybody there, the attention was there and everybody was just so plugged in and locked in. So I would love to go back and maybe go back to Rio, do, Rio Blue Note or something and do a show there, or anywhere in Brazil, because I evidently have a lot of fans there.
Some song formations and we'll make that happen.
There
Simple
you
as that.
go. There you go.
And
I love it.
Last question I have for you before I let you go is, what's the last concert that you went to as a fan, not because there was a chance you were going to get up on stage?
Oh my God, I love that answer. I don't think no one has ever asked me that. And
Oh.
I'm so glad I have something really, really recent. Her name is Cleo Sol. And she played the Hollywood Bowl about a month ago and sold it out. She's a UK artist, but very, very beloved. She went to New York, went to Radio City Music Hall, had to add dates because the demand was so great. All sold out shows. And she came to LA for the first time and sold out the Hollywood Bowl. Her name is Cleo Sol. And
Cleo Sol.
part of it was, there was a girl there who was singing backgrounds for her. And she had actually sang backgrounds for me when I was in London for the Royal Albert Hall show. So we kept in touch. We ended up going to dinner right before the show. So that was kind of the impetus to go. And then finally, I kind of wanted to say, wow, she's coming to LA for the first time and she sold out Hollywood Bowl. I got to figure out like what is all the hype about? And it was a beautiful show. People just connect with her on a really, really deep level. She has such inspirational music. She talks about love, but she talks a lot about, believing in yourself and uplifting others. And so she's almost like what people would say the modern day Sade is. For me, Sade is sacred. There will always only be one Sade, just like there will only be one Whitney. But she definitely has elements of just, because I actually went to see Sade in that same place many, many, many years before. And they both have, that really beautiful way of connecting with their audience. And so it's always nice for me because I always see it as a learning opportunity when I'm on the other side of the stage to really just kind of see, okay, how are they connecting? Like, what is their thing that they do, and it was really cool to be on the other side of the stage.
Cleo Sol, I've got some homework to do, but in the meantime, thank looking forward to seeing the PBS special. Hope to see you live in New York in the near future. And thank you for dispelling the myth about Terry and Jimmy always wearing the suits and shades. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So good to talk with you again. Always a pleasure.
Paltrocast.